Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, October 11th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
Okay, so let's jump into it. Yesterday, after we recorded, it was revealed that Alfonso Cuaron has signed a deal with Apple to develop a new original shows. Not just one show, but a bunch of shows. What do we know about this, Chris?
Right. We don't know much, as in we don't know what the shows are going to be or what they're going to be about. All we know is that several different streaming services were apparently competing to woo Alfonso Cuaron for this sort of thing. As I'm sure our listeners know at this point, everyone out there is trying to launch their own streaming service at this point to compete with Netflix. And Alfonso Cuaron is no stranger to streaming because he made Roma for Netflix, and that was a big hit for them, especially at the Oscars, because it won him a Best Director award. It won Best Foreign Language Film. So now it looks like Apple has sort of won his favor, probably by giving him the best possible offer. And this is a good deal for Apple in the sense that it's going to lend them a touch of prestige depending on what he creates for them. He's not exactly like a household name director at this point. Not in the way that like Steven Spielberg is, but he's has some big films to his name. And
what do you think is the biggest film? Like Gravity is probably his most widely known?
Or like Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't even know if people like think of that as like his movie because it's like part of it. Yeah, but so everyone wants someone big for their streaming service, and Apple has him now.
Is this the biggest get that Apple has gotten? I mean, I guess they already have like some other big filmmakers. Apple seems to be like in the big director collecting business. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like they're going after like, here's the best movie or TV show that we need for our service. It's like, we need to collect all the directors and have them on our shelf.
They definitely feel like they're going for star power because not only do they have Spielberg and J.J. Abrams, but they also have, like Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon. It seems like they're really going for like names rather than just the content itself. So we'll have to see how that turns out.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Steven Spielberg will be reteaming with Tom Hanks and doing something for Apple TV. Brad, what do we know?
Well, Spielberg and Tom Hanks have worked together before on the two World War II series for HBO. There was Band of Brothers and there was The Pacific, both of which were kind of in the same vein as a Saving Private Ryan. And they're going to continue their collaboration of telling stories based in World War II with a series that is heading to Apple TV Plus called Masters of the Air. It's based on a book by Donald L. Miller that follows the American 8th Air Force as they fought in World War II, bombing sites at Berlin, Hanover, and Dresden at the height of the World War, and really striking blows against Nazi Germany. What's interesting about this is that the synopsis for this book actually mentions Clark Gable and Jimmy Stewart and their military service during this time. And so I wonder if the series will include them as characters in the show. But this book does cover a lot of ground and a variety of different people who were pilots during World War II. And this is it's kind of viewed as, I guess, a completion of this sort of World War II trilogy that Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg have been collaborating on. And it was originally set up at HBO, but they let it stay dormant for too long, and it was able to switch over to Apple TV instead.
Competition. Are either of you big fans of those two limited series?
I've seen both of them, and I like them pretty well. I think Band of Brothers is definitely the superior one, but it's not something that I necessarily have revisited since watching them for the first time.
I've only seen Band of Brothers, and I really liked it. I never got around to watching The Pacific, so maybe one day I will when I have free time, which will be never.
Yeah, I've also not seen The Pacific. I liked Band of Brothers, but not as much as obviously Saving Private Ryan. But I know like Band of Brothers is like a big like dad thing. Do you know what I mean? Like dads love.
Well, dads love World War II. That's like the big thing. Dads just love World War II. They just like it's like their thing. They sit down, they turn on the History Channel, and they're like, "Oh, World War II is on."
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about a bunch of things in the works that actually 2 projects that both involve Maniac Cops. The first of which is a Maniac Cop TV series. Chris, what do we know?
Yeah, so Nicolas Winding Refn, who has been talking about being involved with a Maniac Cop remake since at least 2016. For those who don't know, Maniac Cop is a 1988 movie. It's great in a very sleazy, trashy horror way. It's one of those movies where it's literally what it says it is. It's about a maniac cop and he kills people, and that's pretty much it. And it spawned 2 sequels where the maniac cop keeps coming back from the dead and looking progressively worse and worse as his face rots off.
Were the sequels any good? I've only seen the original.
They're good in quotes. They're good in the sense that I like them, but they're not like good movies. But they're fun. They're really enjoyable films in the sense that it's fun to watch a zombie cop running around murdering people. So Refn has been talking about, producing a remake of this for some time with John Hyams directing. John Hyams directed a few of the Universal Soldier sequels, which are actually good, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe, but they are pretty good. And it sort of felt like this project was dead, but now it sounds like it's alive again. And instead of being a movie, it's going to be a TV show for HBO. It's not clear if this is headed to HBO proper or if it's going to be exclusive to HBO Max, the new streaming service from Warner Brothers. But either way, HBO gave this the green light, and it's going to vaguely follow the same premise in that it's about a maniac cop, but they're moving it from New York to LA, and it's also going to feature, quote, a kaleidoscope of characters, which makes it sound a lot like Refn's other TV show, Too Young to Die Old, which was on Amazon and which was also about a kaleidoscope of characters in LA. So that show did not get renewed for a second season, so I'm wondering if he's sort of like porting a bunch of ideas he had for a second season for that over to this, but either way, I'm excited just because I like Refn. I really like Maniac Cop, and I'm curious to see how this turns out.
Yeah, that show was not well received to the point that I didn't even watch it because I just heard so many bad things about it. I do kind of, get a kick out of the idea that HBO could maybe use a Refn Maniac Cop TV series to try to lure people over to their streaming service. Like that would actually get people to sign up, but maybe it would. Who knows?
I would. That's my selling point. I'm not going to sign up HBO Max until you tell me if they're going to have the Maniac Cop series.
Refn to me is so like one of those filmmakers that I will love one of his films and I'll just hate the next film. Like he's so off and on. Like, what is your relationship with him?
I really like his movies. I do think he's really pretentious, but I kind of like that. He makes really like trashy art films. That's how I describe them. They're trying to be art, but they're also really trashy. And I really like pretty much all of his films. I haven't finished it yet, but I've watched almost all of Too Young to Die Old, or Too Old to Die Young rather, and it's very slow paced, but I've liked what I've seen. But I do know he's also an acquired taste. He's not like for everyone.
Yeah, and he's also returning to LA with this. So, I mean, obviously, like people, I think it's probably best received film from the masses is Drive. Right. And that had like LA was a character in that. So maybe this will be a return to that. Speaking of LA being a character in another Maniac Cop project, they're working on a Training Day prequel. What do we know about that, Chris?
Yes. So, Training Day, the film that starred Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, is getting a prequel for reasons I don't really understand. The prequel is going to be set in the 90s, and it's going to focus on a younger version of Denzel Washington's character who If you haven't seen the movie or if you don't remember, he was a very corrupt cop who took a rookie cop played by Ethan Hawke on a very bad day through his. Basically, it was like the first day from hell as Ethan Hawke learned that his new partner is just this really corrupt lunatic. And we don't really know the details of what this is going to be about, other than it's going to focus on a younger version of Denzel Washington's character, which means they don't have to bring Denzel Washington back. They can cast someone else. They could even maybe cast his son, who is an actor now, and he's in the new Christopher Nolan movie. He was in BlacKkKlansman. Or they could, get anyone, really, whoever wants to do the film. I don't really know what the point of this is, because what made Training Day so memorable, at least in my mind, was, that chemistry / anti-chemistry between Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke's character as they went up against each other. And especially Denzel Washington's performance, which he won an Oscar for, is really what made Training Day super memorable, because it was a very big, even sort of like over-the-top performance. And to do a sequel without him seems like a really weird idea. And so I don't really know how this is going to work out.
I would also say the intense style of that film was also like a big thing, a takeaway. At least I took away from it. I'm wondering, is there a way to spin this? Like, is it Denzel's character's first day on the job and it's his training day, but like he's like, I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what is the twist here? What is the thing that like was like, oh yeah, this is a good idea to do this story?
I mean, yeah, like I said, there aren't details, but my guess would be like this would be showing him before he became corrupt. I guess it would be like, here's how he turned into a corrupt cop. Which, like, do we really need a full movie about that? Like, it's more interesting to just jump in with him already corrupt. But I don't know.
Chris, in Star Wars, they give us 3 whole movies about that. So
yes, and that turned out really well.
Okay. Let's move on and talk about another sequel spin-off series in development. This one is for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Brad, what do we know?
Apparently, there is a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air spin-off in the works at Will Smith's Westbrook production company. You might remember a few years back there were rumors of some kind of reboot in the works and that Will Smith was involved. But that turned out to be either rumors that just weren't true or maybe something that didn't come together, because once Will Smith finally got asked about it, he said that a reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air would probably happen, quote, when hell freezes over. But it sounds like something might be happening with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's not a reboot necessarily, but apparently it's a spin-off series. But we have absolutely zero details on it. It was mentioned offhandedly in a big story on Will Smith and basically the size of his success in Hollywood as an actor, in TV and film, as a rapper, as a producer, and all that stuff. And it just merely mentions in one line that Westbrook is developing some kind of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air spin-off series. It's worth noting that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a series that was on NBC, so it's possible this is something that could be cooked up for NBC Universal streaming service. But the show was distributed by Warner Brothers Television, so it could also easily be a Warner Media production that could head to HBO Max. Either way, this seems like it's something new that is in the works. But again, we have no idea what the story will be. The only thing that we'd heard previously when there was a reboot in the works was that it would be a new spin on the Fish Out of Water tale that had the spirit of the original series. But if this is a spin-off, that would imply that there's maybe at least some sort of connective tissue. So, the easiest thing to do would be to maybe have something involving, the main character, Will's son, who needs to learn some life lessons by getting a change of environment. It might be kind of interesting, although somewhat simple, to maybe take a cue from Will Smith's own life and have it be like maybe Will, grew up and kind of had a career like the real Will Smith and became, a famous rapper or actor, and his kids are so hooked on this, upper class rich lifestyle that maybe he decides to send them back to Philly to get a dose of what real life is like. That's just mere speculation on my part. It sounds like something that could be fun. There's also, the idea of maybe this becoming a more dramatic series. Not too long ago, there was this trailer that went viral that was basically a modern dramatic take on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And Will Smith actually had addressed it himself in a video and talked about how he was always kind of interested and fascinated by this dramatic side of the series that they couldn't address as much as he wanted to because the show was a comedy and not a drama. And there were some times when they did get a little dramatic, including the famous episode when Will Smith's father basically, walks out on his life again and kind of leaves him behind. And Will has to come to terms with this idea of, why his father doesn't want to be around and be part of his life. So maybe there's a dramatic turn for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the future where it's not a straight up comedy, but it's something a little bit more grounded and less sitcom-y.
My first thought is like maybe they're doing a reboot with Jaden Smith or one of Will Smith's kids. But then you make a good point there, Brad. This is not called a reboot. This is called a spin-off. That makes me think like spin-offs are usually with like a side character or something like this. Could this be like a TV series that like, has Carlton in it or something?
I don't know. I'm not sure how much of a hot commodity Alfonso Ribeiro is these days. If anything, I could maybe see it focusing on like, maybe Will Smith has a son of his own and who is grown up, and maybe has his own kid, and they apply the story that way.
But that sounds more like a sequel or reboot or like a Boy Meets World like kind of scenario. Or what's the reboot of that? Girl Meets
World. Yeah.
I feel like this, I don't know, spin-off seems to insinuate something different than that, but maybe I could be wrong.
What if this is about the cab driver who dropped Will Smith off in Bel-Air, who I always thought Will Smith was unnecessarily rude to because he's like, oh, this cab is fresh. But then when he drops him off, he's like, yo, Holmes, smell you later. And he holds his nose. And that's like really mean to the cab driver. Like that. You just said he was fresh. He had dice in the mirror, Will. Why are you talking trash on this cab? So I think it's about the cab driver going to therapy because Will Smith put him on this emotional roller coaster.
But he'll be an Uber driver today to show
yes, exactly. Yeah, right.
Guys, why are we not Hollywood executives greenlighting stuff?
I don't know, because that's $1 million idea right there.
Okay. One thing that hit today, I don't think any of us have seen it, is the new Breaking Bad movie, El Camino. This is on Netflix. This stars Aaron Paul reprising his role as Jesse Pinkman. And the first reviews are online. We even have a review on slashfilm.com. I'll link that in the show notes. But Chris, what are people saying?
The reviews seem to be mixed. They're not overwhelmingly negative, but they're not like gushing either. It boils down to it's a really well-made movie. Aaron Paul is really good. It also gives Jesse Pinkman a sort of actual ending because the show, even though I was fine with how it left his character, it sort of left him up in the air in a way because the series Breaking Bad ends with his character just driving away laughing like a lunatic, and this sort of gives him closure. But at the same time, the consensus seems to be, as well made as this is, we don't really need it. So one review says this is more like a collection of deleted scenes than an actual movie. Some people say that it's sort of like fan service. It's giving fans what they want, while not really giving a worthwhile film. So kind of mixed. And I'm still interested in watching this. I haven't watched it yet. My wife and I are going to watch it tonight. But these reviews, they're not as exciting as I thought they would be because, even though I'm of the mindset that we didn't really need this, I still like Vince Gilligan. I like, Aaron Paul as an actor. So I was sort of interested in seeing how this turned out. But these reviews have sort of tamped down my enthusiasm a bit.
Yeah, I went to bed at like 11:30 last night. And I was like tempted. I was like, should we stay up an extra half an hour and watch this? But like I was just so tired. But you mentioned fan service. I'm curious what you guys think because fan service always is used negatively. But I feel like if you are a fan, then can't that be positive? Like, if I am a huge Breaking Bad fan, is it good that it's fan service?
I think it depends on how it's done.
Yeah.
If it's like fan service for the sake of being fan service, like it doesn't like seem organic, then it could definitely backfire and be like, they're just doing this to please the internet. But there are some ways to make fan service work, and I don't really know how it plays out here because, like I said, I haven't watched it yet. So I'm curious to see if they pull it off or not.
I'm guessing that it's very hard to end this story, right? Because like we know that Walt is dead after the events of Breaking Bad, so it's not like he's going to come back, and it's not like I don't know. I feel like fans aren't. There's no way to give fans what they want.
Right. I mean, I guess we just have to see how it goes. I mean, there's definitely a lot of buzz about this. Netflix didn't go crazy with the advertising for this, but it's been, trending all day as like the number one trending topic. So people are definitely aware of it. So there's definitely enough interest, at least for this weekend, for people to give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all that happens now with Netflix, right? Like, there's enough interest for 1 weekend or 1 week, and then like it goes away. Yeah.
Like there are some shows that like Glow. I never hear anyone talking about that, even though it's really good. So I guess it just depends.
On film Twitter, I feel like I see it all the time.
I don't think I saw anyone talk about this most recent season, which I thought was really good.
I did not like this recent season, but anyways. Okay, well, I'm going to try to check out El Camino this weekend. Maybe we can do a spoiler episode next week if there's enough to talk about. But we'll see. But speaking of fan service, one of the favorite characters in Star Wars is a alien character, a Mon Calamari named Admiral Akbar. He's obviously it's a trap guy. He was a lot of Star Wars fans were upset because in Rian Johnson's Star Wars: The Last Jedi, he was killed off just in a line of dialogue. We didn't see it. We didn't even know. It's just killed off. Just someone said he was dead. But it seems like his legacy will continue on in the Star Wars universe. Brad, what do we know?
Yes, Admiral Akbar was given somewhat of a lame send-off, like you just said. But it appears he might get some kind of tribute in Rise of Skywalker. At least that's what we're assuming, because there is a son of Admiral Akbar who was recently introduced in Star Wars Allegiance issue number 2, which is a comic book series that is part of the Journey to the Rise of Skywalker brand of publications that are hitting shelves leading up to the release of the movie in December. And in the comic, we have General Leia Organa, Rey, Chewbacca, and BB-8 going to Mon Cala, which is the planet of the Mon Calamari, to both pay tribute to Admiral Akbar by meeting with his son Aftab Akbar, and also asking the Mon Calamari for their help in taking on the First Order. So we get to meet Aftab, and he already has an established relationship with Leia, and the comic book shows that the Mon Calamari are not really too happy to see Leia and the rest of the Resistance, simply because it made them lose one of their most treasured war heroes and people of their species. But Aftab does not hold any grudge. He clearly has a warm relationship with Leia. And the reason that it seems to be that he's in the movie is IO9 actually noticed that one of the recently released cardboard cutouts featuring characters from The Force Awakens that went on sale for Triple Force Friday is a generically named Mon Calamari general. It doesn't give the name of Aftab Akbar, but if you compare how the cardboard cutout looks to the illustration of Aftab, the face is extremely similar to the illustration in the comic. And that's not just because it's a Mon Calamari and they all have a similar look, because there is a very distinct difference between the various Mon Calamari characters that we have seen in various Star Wars movies. And so if you look at the face, it's very similar, and it's not just similar, like I said, in a way that the common traits of Mon Calamari are. The question, though, is even if Aftab Akbar does appear in The Rise of Skywalker, is this a character who has a somewhat prominent role and interacts with our main characters? Or is it one of those many background characters who gets a name but doesn't really have a big part in the movie and is just merely a background player? That's something that we don't know.
Yeah, no, I had heard rumors that Admiral Akbar had a son that was in this movie for a while now, so this adds up. And also there is a Mon Calamari character that's in the Resistance that is supposedly part of the Star Wars Rise of the Resistance ride that's coming in December and January to Disney World and Disneyland, so that could be him as well. So that is interesting. I guess at least Admiral Akbar his legacy is continuing past that one line in Last Jedi. And hopefully that will please some fans that were upset.
There's also a rumor that Aftab Akbar is getting a spin-off at Disney Plus where he'll be sent to live with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine. So
that probably won't go well. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you on Monday.